Now, that was The Other Side. This is obviously the movie that I know most about because I both wrote it, participated in it, and was part of the crew. So I'll share the stories that I have. First of all, after screening the film, I've learned that not everyone knows what a Ukrainian trident looks like. And that is a pretty vital part of the symbolism of the movie. So the tattoo we see on Anya's shoulder is the Ukrainian trident, which is an ancient symbol for Ukraine. So this shows the allegiance of the main character with Ukraine. And you may notice that the father's allegiance may be somewhere else. Also, I learned that not everyone knows where Donbass is. Donbass is an area that stretches actually between Ukraine and Russia, but is well one of the main fissures of the war. So those two hopefully explain some of the symbolism in the movie. Even though for me this is not a movie about Ukraine and Russia or anything like that, this is a movie about disagreeing on politics with your family and how some things can remain even though you have those disagreements. Now, the first thing that we made when we were making this movie is the picture of Papa's legs. So, a very friendly person from Denmark took a picture of his legs for me with a cake, and that cake became the template for the cake that we had to find in Estonia. Now, cake tastes differ across the Scandinavia, so it was very hard to find a cake that actually even resembled what he had found. We managed to find it in the end, and it was delicious. I would know because I had to eat it multiple times as I was sitting there on the beach. Um, Also, one of my main learnings of making this movie is that you need to be careful of what your character wears, but also how much stuff you force her to carry. Because in the final scene on the beach, you may notice that she just leaves her sandals and goes to the beach. That was a necessity, because originally in the script I had written that she picks up her sandals and walks to the beach, but that was literally impossible when also holding a box and some flowers. So that'll be something I remember for the next time I write a script. Now, we found this magnificent public library that is outdoors in Tallinn. I love that place so much. It was a bit of a challenging place to shoot, though. At one point, where Laura and I were actually shooting the scene, an elderly man on a scooter, on a motorized scooter, came into the shot, got off his bike, and just like stood and looked at us. That was very distracting to say the least, but we did convince him to let us finish filming instead. Then, a little bit later, an elderly woman walked into the shot, sat down, and would not move. We tried to reason with her in all the languages that we knew, but none of us unfortunately spoke Estonian. So, some of the shots that we intended to take, we just couldn't get because it's a public place. And if people aren't kind enough to move, there's actually nothing we can do. Um, Now, told you a little bit about the inconsistency of the jacket in Why Are You Looking at Me? We actually had the same problem in our movie. It is super hard to make a tear run very nicely down your cheek. I learned that the hard way. That one took a lot of takes. But when we finally got the perfect tear, it actually came out of the wrong eye. So we had to flip my face to make it match with the movement of wiping the tear away as I walk off the scene. And those are the kind of cowboy tricks you kind of need to make to make a movie complete. Um, Now, the beach scene. Let's talk about that. One of the things that I learned from movie making is that sound is very hard. Both recording sound, there's something called room sound, means it differs if you record that way or that way, the room will sound differently. So cutting between a dialogue from one side to the other side is hopeless. It'll sound, you'll be able to hear the breaks of the cuts. Um, but we had a completely different problem on the beach, and that is that we lost all sound. So all the sound you hear when we're on the beach is Foley. Foley is sound that you make in a studio. So we had to recreate the whole soundscape for that scene afterwards. And actually, I think we did a good job. It sounds pretty natural. Um, Also on the beach, there are people, and at one point, a woman literally tiptoed into the scene, stayed there, and then tiptoed out. It's funny that people would go into the shot and not out. Um, and then one of the interesting things about this movie also is that, well, for me, the story is not completely autobiographic, but it is a story of many people who share my ancestry of being Russian from Ukraine. So I actually crowdsourced the insults that you hear Papa saying. So these are actual things that parents have told their children in the situation, and I loved having that community and really gathering them. Um, but one of the challenging things is finding a person who would be willing to say those things, because that is pretty mean. Luckily, Pavel stepped in and did it, and that is because he believes it's an important story to tell. Um, Now, it's time to watch the next movie. Once Upon a Time, a Mother Sang a Lullaby.